Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Time out. Sorry about that. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Say it. Shri Srimad Bhakti-yoga Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajapacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Navadvip Dham ki Jai, Ganga Yamuna Mai ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani ki Jai, Bhakti Devi ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru. Well, we'll soon find out if Krishna wants me to give class today. I don't know if this... if they're all dependent on the voice for all these things. We'll see. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 15th day of October, 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're in the 5th canto, 5th chapter, the creative impetus. The canto is the creative impetus. The chapter is Lord Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons, text 27. Oh boy, we had one of our replacement drawers. Who did it? Okay. Okay. It's a little small, but everyone has a device there, I see, except a few. Mano, Vacho, Drik, Kadane Hitasya, Sakshat, Kritam, Me, Paribarhanam, Hi, Vina, Puman, Yena, Mahavimohat, Kritanta Pashan, Navimoktum, Ishet, Manovachodrik Kadanehi Tasya,
Sakshat Kritam Me Paribarhanam Hi Vinapamanyena Mahavimohat Kritanta Pashan Vimuktam Ishet Manovachodrik Kadanehi Tasya Sakshat Kritam Me Paribarhanam Hi Vinapamanyena Mahavimohat Kritanta Pashan Vimuktam Ishet. Got it? Yeah. Mano Vachodrik Kadanehi Tasya Sakshat Kritam Me Paribarhanam Hi Vinapamanyena Mahavimohat Kanta Pashan Vimuktam Ishet. Well, we're done. Mano Vachodrik Kadanehi Tasya Sakshat Kritam Me Paribarhanam Hi Vinapamanyena Mahavimohat Pashan Vimuktam Ishet. Mano Vachodrik Kadanehi Tasya Sakshat Kritam Me Paribarhanam Hi Vinapamanyena Mahavimohat Kanta Pashan Vimuktam Ishet. Anyone else? Mano Vachodrik Kadanehi Tasya Sakshat Kritam Me Paribarhanam Hi Vinapamanyena Mahavimohat Kritanta Pashan Vimuktam Ishet. So I'll do the word by word, but before I do, Daniel can get my hats around the corner there. Thank you. Manaha, mind. Vachaha, words. Drik, sight. Karana, of the senses. Ihitasya, of all activities for maintenance of body, society, friendship, and so on. Sakshat Kritam, directly offered. Me, of me. Paribarhanam, worship. He, because. Vina, without. Puman, any person. Yena, which. Mahavimohat, from the great illusion. Kritanta Pashat, exactly like the stringent rope of Yamaraj. Na, not. Vimuktam, to become free. Ishet, becomes able. Okay, give me 1 second. All right. Translation. The true activity of the sense organs, this is Lord Rishabhdeva's last instruction, so listen up. The true activity of the sense organs, mind, sight, words, and all the knowledge gathering and working senses, is to engage fully in my service. Unless his senses are thus engaged, a living entity cannot think of getting out of the great entanglement of material existence, which is exactly like Yamaraj's stringent rope. Purport. As stated in the Narada Pancharatra, Sarvapadi vinimuktam tatpadatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. This is the conclusion of bhakti. All the time, Lord Rishabhdeva has been stressing devotional service. And now he is concluding by saying that all the senses should be engaged in the Lord's service. There are 5 senses by which we gather knowledge, and 5 senses with which we work. These 10 senses and the mind should be fully engaged in the Lord's service. Without engaging them in this way, one cannot get out of the clutches of Maya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So in this final verse of Lord Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons, give me 1 second here. I seem to have caught a cold. But don't worry, it's not COVID. No way. In this final instruction to his sons, he's giving a verse, or he's speaking a verse that will then be repeated in substance by one of his exalted sons known as the 9 Yogendras. I think I've mentioned them before. These 9 Yogendras took sannyas. As soon as Rishabhadev took sannyas, they also took sannyas. And they would travel together, naked, and they would, wherever there was a submissive ear, someone equal to hear, exalted souls like kings and others, they would instruct them. And so there's a nice section in the 11th canto in which King Nimi is asking them questions and they're answering. So the verse that is exactly related to this is spoken by Havi, I forget which one of the 9 Yogendras, during the first answer. And he says there, Kayena vacha manasendriyava buddhyatmanava nusatasvabhavat kadoti yadyat sakalam padasmai narayanayeti samarpayetat. The question asked him by Nimi was, how can one achieve the ultimate goal of life? And what's the means? And the implication was, which he took, was how can one get completely free of fear? And that's what the substance of the first few verses of his answer are. And of course, his first answer is Manye kutasya bhayamachyutasya, that one who always remembers the lotus feet of Achyuta, Krishna, can very easily conquer over fear. And then he has the famous verse there, Bhayam tutiya banabeshataksya, that fear is caused by our turning away from Krishna and becoming absorbed in the dualities of this material world. And in that mentality, our service attitude becomes completely reversed. Instead of serving Krishna with our senses and our mind, we're serving our senses and our mind, trying to please them. And so it's an incompatible situation and can never bring peace. So it brings fear and anxiety. And so the solution is to turn back again to the Lord and to serve Him under the guidance of the Guru, who you regard as your very worshipable Lord and very self. So in the course of his further instructions in this section of the 11th canto, he says, Kayena vacha manasendriyava buddhyatmanava nusatasvabhava kadodi yadyat sakalam padasmai narayanayeti samarpayetat. In accordance with the particular nature one has acquired in conditioned life, whatever one does with body, words, mind, senses, intelligence, or purified consciousness, one should offer to the Supreme, thinking, this is for the pleasure of Lord Narayan, or this is for the pleasure of Krishna. So, when you think about that, it's all-encompassing. In other words, this list covers everything. Body, words, mind, all the senses active and knowledge acquiring, and the intelligence and so forth. Then we're always doing something with those. We're always doing something with those, one or more of them. So one has to feel that, oh, this is not just some selfish thing I'm doing. This particular activity is for the service of Krishna. And this is the pure devotion. Now, it expands on, going back to our purport here, Prabhupada immediately quotes this verse, which doesn't mention it here, but it's within the first chapter of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Rupa Goswami is defining what pure devotion is. And this verse is often paired with the other little more famous verse, Anyabilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Janavatam. Anukulena Krishnanushilanam Bhakti Uttama. Uttama Bhakti, pure devotion, is defined as that which is, first of all, what isn't it? It's free of any other desire. Anya abhilashita. Abhilasha means strong desire. Asha means to long. We sing every morning in that song, Tulsi, I'm longing for the service of Radha and Krishna, is really what it means. So, Anya abhilashita shunyam, being shunya, that's a long U by the way, completely devoid of any other desire. And then he gives a little list of the jnana, karmadi, anavratam. Avratam means to cover or obscure. So our original pure desire, which is still in there, we can't, is to serve God, is covered over by a material desire. And that's why these material desires are perverted reflections of our original desire, original activities in the spiritual world. So jnana encompasses generally the desire for liberation, because that's what the jnanis do. They're always contemplating neti neti. Have you heard this phrase before? Some of you have. It means not this, not this. Not this, neti neti. No, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it. None of this is what I'm looking for. It's beyond that, it's pure Brahman, you see. It's not, it's kind of a negative discipline, where you're trying to negate all of your material desires and all of the variegatedness of this world, and simply exist in that pure Brahman light of pure consciousness. So it shouldn't be covered by any desire for liberation. And then he says, jnana karmi. Karma refers to like ordinary food of desires. Jnana karma adi, that can cover all the yogic cities and all other things which one may desire. There's three categories of people, the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, four. Karmis, jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. So the karmis, we call it karmis, are ordinary fruit of people who are just trying to satisfy these senses in the mind with gross or subtle sense gratification. The jnanis, they say, well, that's no good. That'll bring me another birth. With this body, I don't want that. So let me suppress all the desires. No desires. Not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. It's almost akin to Buddhism, which is a real shunyavad. And then there's the yogis who want special powers generally. They develop these powers, they become enamored of those, And then there's the bhaktas who don't want any of this. They simply want to please Krishna. And that's the rest of the verse. Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam Bhakti Uttama. Anukulyena, favorably serving Krishna for his pleasure at every moment. That's pure devotion. That's what's aimed at in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That's what's aimed at in the Hare Krishna movement. So this verse appears just a few verses later. Sarvapadi Vinimuktam. It's quoted from Narada Pancharatra, and Rupa Goswami felt it put it right at the beginning of his book. And he's stating what is the subject of this book. These two verses encompass it. So Sarva Upadi Vinimuktam. Who can tell me, besides Vijay and Balaram, what is an upadi? You may know, but does any of the others know? Sarva means all. Upadis? No? Designations. Yeah. A typical upadi is, I'm this body, And then you have other upadis on top of that. There's a name, there's an age, there's a race, there's a language, there's a family, all of that. Those are all artificial impositions or upon the soul. There's none of these things. But we identify with that, and that prevents us from understanding who we really are and acting on the spiritual plane. So he says, Sarva upadi vinu muktam, completely liberated from those, not identifying with those. Tat paratvena nirmalam, being dedicated to the Supreme and being completely pure in our desires and everything. And then he gives what do we do? Rishikena. Now who knows what the Rishikas are? Senses. The senses. Both active and knowledge acquiring. So with the senses, Rishikena, Rishikesha. Rishikaisha, the Lord of the senses, that's Krishna. He's the master of all the senses. This name is used in the Bhagavad Gita several times, where Krishna is described as Rishikesh. Sevanam, service. With the senses, serving the master of the senses. This is said to be bhakti, to be pure bhakti. So in his final instruction here, Lord Rishabhadeva is coming back to the essence, which he's emphasized all along, that if you want to be liberated from this painful birth and death, and old age and disease and all the other miseries, you have to, with all of the senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, known as Gyanendriya, that which you gather knowledge. These are what we normally call senses. In the West, you learn what are your senses? Oh, the eyes. You can just think of the head. It's all in the head. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue for tasting, and the touch. Those are knowledge acquiring senses. And then the active senses. For the devotee, what's the most important sense? Not the tongue, but the voice. Tongue is knowledge acquiring. The voice is everything, right? If you lose your voice, you're in real trouble. I've had that several times. You probably had. You can't do anything. So, just see how Srila Prabhupada ran the whole movement with his voice. He spoke his books, gave instructions, chanted, everything's coming. So all of these, and then of course the hands and the feet, and then the generating organ and the evacuating organ, all these are active organs. So all of them to be engaged fully in Krishna's service. Unless they're thus engaged, the living entity cannot think of getting out of the great entanglement of material existence. So that's important because one of the senses, as we learned in the Bhagavad Gita, can drag the mind away, just like a powerful wind can take a boat. If it's not moored to the pier here, boom! Before you know it, it's going to be 10 miles out. So the mind can be like a powerful wind. We have to bring it under control and direct all the senses to be used in Krishna's service. Otherwise, don't use it. That's the idea. And it's difficult because we're so accustomed to sense gratification. The senses have their own demands, and especially if you spent, as most of us have, some time in this world just being an ordinary sense gratifier, then it's a big process of purification. And that's what the sadhana bhakti is, the rules and the regulations. Now for your information, when you hear that rules and regulations, the rules are the proscriptions, or the prescriptions, what you should do. The regulations are what you shouldn't do. So you get prescriptions and proscriptions. Proscriptions are what don't do. That's why I have regulator principles. Don't do it. Illicit sex, eat meat, don't do it. But there's so many proscriptions, what we should do. Well, we have to eat eat prasadam. You're going to talk about Krishna. You're going to hear about Krishna. So there's knowing that, and being determined to achieve perfection in this life. Here he's putting it on the line. If you want to be liberated, this is what you have to do. You may remember some verses back. There's the 3 verses that begin with Nunam Pramatta Kudate Vikarma, which means certainly those who are after sense gratification are mad in this world. He says, I don't think it's a very good idea. In the Sadhamanya, he says, because you're sure to get another body, and therefore you're sure to ensure a lot of suffering for yourself. And if you're just engaging in sense gratification, your chances are high you're going to be performing a lot of sins, and so you may get an abominable body, like a worm or a hog or something. And yeah, you'll engage in sense gratification, but it'll be, so horrible, it'll be frightening. So that's what he's saying there. So then he says in the next verse, that certainly unless you start inquiring into the absolute truth, then you're going to be defeated. Defeated consists of not getting liberation, staying in the round of birth. Palabhavastavat abodha jato. That's born of ignorance. This being bound up in birth and death is born of complete ignorance. You don't really know what's good for you. You don't really know what you should do. So you just do what the mind and the senses impel you to do. And that's basically animal life. So one has to begin that, just like it said, because Bhagavatam, don't forget, is the best commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And Vedanta Sutra begins with that injunction. You're a human being, then inquire into the absolute truth. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. What is that absolute truth? The source of everything. That's the basic definition. And who is that? It's Krishna. Aham Sarvasya Bhabhavo. Aham Evasam Agre. He declares in second canto here in his book, and he says in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So if we believe that, then we have to inquire. And as soon as you acquire that includes, well, who am I? What is this world? This is the tattva jigyasa, inquiry into the truth. So here he said, yavan jigyasa atma tattvam. Notice the same word as you, jigyasa atma tattvam. Because as long as you act on the material plane, you fill your mind with karmic desires, fruit of desires. Yavat kriyas tavadidam manovai karmatmakam. Karmatmakam means a material mind, which is what basic default is in this world. And that materialistic mind brings you another body. That's the process of transmigration. It's the state of your consciousness, which you've cultivated during a lifetime, that will determine what your next body is. So therefore, using our intelligence, we should direct the mind to inquire in the senses, to receive the knowledge, think about the knowledge, share the knowledge, and live by the knowledge that we get from these books, that we get from the higher authorities. So then he says, and this is why I brought this up, because he's the same thing, is that these have to be engaged fully in my service. Rishabdev is openly saying, I'm Vasudeva, I'm Krishna here. So the third one, he says, that thus impelled by the material mind, you covered by ignorance, you stay bound up. Pritir nayavan mai vasudeve namuchate dehi yogena tavat. That's the first of his instructions where he reveals to him, I'm Vasudev. And until and unless one has love for me, Vasudev, one cannot get liberated from this birth and death. Now, for those who take the Bhagavatam as the ultimate pramana, or evidence of what we should understand and what we should do and what we should not do, here's a conclusive statement. There's no liberation without love for Krishna. There's no mukti without bhakti. There's only the illusion of mukti, the self-delude, self-delude. What is that? Vimuktamaninas means they think they're liberated, those who are not devotees. And through the rare soul who can, by force of will, curb the senses and control the mind and withdraw it from the sense objects, usually means you're off alone somewhere, not on the Southern California beach, that's for sure. You're off way over in the Himalayas or something, Because any little agitation of the senses can ruin your meditation. So I'll go far away so I won't see it. But devotees, Haridas Thakur, Maya Devi herself came twice, once in the person of a prostitute, once personally, to allure him, and he wasn't allured at all, because he's completely absorbed in the nectar of Krishna, of chanting the holy name. So that strength can come by cultivating, Krishna consciousness in this way. So Rishabdev has earlier said that until one has love for me, which is the fruit of bhakti, one will not be liberated. And here he's saying the same thing. Unless one's senses are thus engaged in my service, both active and knowledge acquiring, one cannot, no living entity can think of getting out of the great entanglement of material existence. Well, you can think about it, and you can hope about it, but you're not going to be able to do it. All the senses have to be engaged. And that's why Krishna consciousness is such an all-encompassing process. We certainly have engagements for all the senses. Even the household, there's an engagement for sex, to have nice children and raise them in Krishna consciousness, that's there. So that's the systematic, the science of Krishna consciousness that Rupa Goswami has presented in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is really the guidebook for everything that Prabhupada has taught us. Recently, where were we reading? I forget. About we heard about the 5 main processes of devotional service, associated with devotees, chanting the holy name, hearing the Bhagavatam regularly, living in a holy place, and worshiping the deity with faith and veneration. These are the 5. Now, if you study those, you realize it sounds like the morning program, right? Especially for those who, were able to live in the ashram. That's what Prabhupada did. That was the model for it. And it says there even a little advancement on this path. You can, on any of those, you can get love of God. So all of those, especially, we have a chance to engage in them, and this is a very healthy program. If you follow it carefully, you're sure to make advancement. But it takes, what is it? Enthusiasm, patience, determination. In the matter of what? Tat tat karma pravartanat. Enthusiasm just isn't exists in a void or a vacuum. You're enthusiastic about what? The materialists are very enthusiastic about sense gratification. They're really determined to get enough money to buy what they want to get. So it's a constant. So we need to have those things in relationship to getting liberation, but mostly getting pure love for Krishna. And it's great because here he's mentioning liberation. Okay, but we understand that ultimately that's not even a concern for the pure devotees. You know, Bilamangal says, Bhaktis tvahis tidatada bhagavan yadisat daivena nakpalati divya kushoramurti. If one is firmly fixed in devotion to you, my Lord, Bhaktis tvahi stidatada means firmly, you know, oh Bhagavan. If one is in, then that brings about the fruit of that devotion. He doesn't say liberation there. Bhagavan daivena nak palati divya, palati is a fruit, kishoramurti. One gets a vision, a personal vision of the beautiful adolescent form of Krishna. And as far as Maya, Mukti is concerned, she's waiting at the door, the Anjali, how can I serve you? In other words, Mukti is already taken care of. And anything you need in the way of Dharma, Artha, and Kama, that will also be provided. We need a little sense gratification. You need to have a little sandesh, glubjaman, every so often. You know, that's just it. But in the context of Krishna, oh, this is prasadam, Krishna's already tasted it. You know, you have to sleep a little bit, you know. But for real devotees, the real sense gratification is chanting and dancing. It's not really sense gratification. But Prabhupada said it's recreation. This movement is basically a movement of recreation only. That's when we had, you know, the devotees were going out 8 hours a day, Harinam, you know, and singing like that, coming back. So it's still that way if you understand it. Isn't there a famous letter, Vijay, to who is it? One of the devotees in England about book distribution. You'll soon see that it's delightful. It's kind of a recreation. As if play. Yeah, I mean devotees who are absorbed and pure and tasting the nectar, then the whole process of devotional service, even the austerities, they can be the most tasty because you feel, this is an austerity, but I'm doing it for Krishna, so it's a way of showing your real love, to take on the difficulties for Krishna. That's why you see the greatest devotees, they take on such incredible services, because they want to express their love for the Lord in the most sincere way, you know. So we can take all these instructions. It's now, you know, this is the last one. And they're really important. Prabhupada would quote them all the time, especially the first few. Nayam deho deha bhajang niloke. Rishabdev is like heavy, you know, he's not convincing any words. He says, first off, he says, do not, those who are human beings, my sons, you know, a human being taking the body of human beings, should not work really hard for sense gratification that's on the level of the hogs, the stool-eating hogs. He actually used that word, you know. By contrast, instead, one should perform austerities. Now, it's interesting that Prabhupada usually, you know, says austerities and penance. Have you noticed that? Austerities and penance. Now, penance, of course, is, you have the word repentant, you know. Means that, I'm repentant for all the sins I performed. It's very much present in Western religion, you know. And therefore, I need to perform this austerity in order to atone for this sin. So, the idea of atoning for sins is dealt with in the 6th canto in the story of Ajamil. And really, aside, you know, without chanting the holy name, all the atonements are ultimately frustrating because then you don't get out the desire to perform the sin. You can atone for the sin, like you go and confess to you know, on the Saturday or Sunday, I forget, I don't know where they get, right, in the Catholicism. You confess, but you still have the desire to perform that, you know. And oftentimes you get into the syndrome of sinning and confessing, because you're not really dealing with the root of the desire seed of performing. You're not getting the higher taste. It's right there in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter. Vishayava nivartante nidahara sadehinak vasavarjam vasopyasa padam jishrana vartate. That the Vishayas, the objects of the senses, say beautiful women, whatever, you can practice to give them up. In other words, you could not see them, go place where they aren't there. Vishayava nirahara sadehina. Nirahara literally means not eating, not consuming. So you're not, each of the senses has its object to consume. So you're not consuming. Okay, that's fine. But the desire is still there, deep in the heart. And so you come away from your retreat or wherever you are, you get back to, and there's the object of the senses, and there's desires coming up again. And it's very difficult, to stay austere. But when you give those things up and you get the higher taste, then you remain fixed in consciousness. This is a very important verse for devotees. Because without becoming free from the lower desires, what to speak of more subtle desires, there's no real chance of advancing in Krishna consciousness. And so many devotees have fallen victim because they weren't careful to remain aloof from or they became weak in their sadhana. The sadhana is where you get the higher taste, the holy name and the deities and the kirtan and preaching. There's a very higher taste, and that can give you a protection against the lower taste. But if your sadhana becomes weak, suddenly you may be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in the movement. Still, you're not on the level of prema bhakti where and you become victimized by your own mind. It's always your own mind, but you're not careful. So that's a very important lesson. We have to remain tat karma bhavartanat. And what do we have before that? We utsaha nishayadayat achahara piyasascha pajalpo niyamagraha janasangastalaya shadbi bhakti pranashiti. Pranashiti, isn't it pranashiti? Completely destroyed. Overeating, over-collecting, working very hard for material things, nonsense talk, niyamagraha, which breaks down into two, neglecting the regular principles of devotional service, the practices, or going through the motions, not really putting any heart into it, which is preliminary to giving them up. And then janasanga, associating with non-devotees, and laulyam, being greedy for material things. Now it's interesting that this is the negative, but then is the positive, what you should do. And both of them have the thing of giving up bad association. Sangha tyagat, that's what we should do, to give up association with materialists. So enthusiasm, confidence, patience, and confidence in the matter of performing the regular tat karma bhavartanat, all the things that we know we should do. Sangha tyagat and sato vritte, to give up the association of non-devotees and to follow in the path of the great devotees. The positive model, and there's the negative we want to avoid. So this book, when it came out, it was revolutionary. It was like, it gave so much substance, so much, and so concise, 11 verses, about practical devotional service. It's written for devotees, for sure. But Prabhupada wanted us to distribute it, so they printed it, and they took it out to people. So anyway, these concise verses, there's only, 20 verses here, or so of instruction. They're all very valuable for devotees. And what is he saying at the very beginning? Okay, you want to enjoy, I understand that. You're enjoying souls. This is our nature, looking for ananda. But in the material sphere, without any understanding of the transcendence, we simply degrade ourselves and cause extreme suffering. A little flickering happiness, a cheeseburger, and you're condemned for how many thousands of years, millions of years, for killing the cow. This is very dangerous. Without knowledge, So he said, rather perform these austerities, tapo, divine, which are meant for purification, and once that purification takes place, you become gradually more able to enjoy Brahma Saukyam, spiritual happiness. Now it's interesting that the second verse, surprisingly, Prabhupada talks about, okay, there's two kinds of these Mahatmas one can associate with, the devotees and the impersonalists. Remember he talks like that? He mentioned that. Because he talked about Brahma Saukyam. It's not clear, there's also Brahmananda, that's Brahma Saukya, which is impersonal, and the Premananda. So in that verse he mentions, in the commentaries it's understood. But it all comes back, everything starts with proper association. Associating with great devotees and knowing how to associate. So service. Mahatsevam dwaramahu vimuktes. This opens the door to liberation. Service to great Mahatmas. Tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sangam. And the door to darkness and ignorance and suffering is there by associating with materialists, means those who are too attached to women and all that kind of thing. So then he says, well, who are those Mahatmas? That's the next question. Mahantas te samachitta prashanta vimanyabhak suridaksada. He gives a little list there of qualities. Samachitta, they're equipoise. They see with equal vision. Means that vidya vinaya sampanne, they're seeing everyone as spirit soul. They're not making distinctions on material basis. Prashanta, they're very peaceful because they don't desire anything material. Vimanyavak, they are free of envy. And Prabhupada has this incredible synonym. You remember that, Vijay? This is for, one has to preach Krishna consciousness without becoming angry if someone doesn't take a book. I don't know if you mentioned that, but that's what's right in the synonyms. And so, Suridaksa, and they're friends of all. Because the real saints and Mahatmas, they are tasting Krishna consciousness and working as hard as possible to give it. Because they have empathy. What's that phrase? We should all know it. Padadukka dukkhi. Who can explain? Who's not an old devotee? Any bhakta? Well, you're young enough. You know what it means? I'm sorry? Paradukka dukkhi? Yeah. What did he say? Yeah. In other words, your empathy, it's called the definition of empathy, is that you see someone suffering, you want to do something about it. It's not, I just heard Prabhupada on the tape, he's always dealing with this. Materialism means you see other people suffering, that makes you happy. There's a word in German that came up during the war, Schadenfreude. You've heard that, because all of it was horrible. That's the lowest type of mentality, to take pleasure in others' suffering. Can you imagine? There's people like that, sociopaths. But the devotee is just the opposite. He takes suffering in others' suffering. That's why Prahlad says, Shoche tatova makachesa indriyata. I'm lamenting for all these fools and rascals who've turned away from you and are working so hard to enjoy a little flickering maya sukhaya, illusory happiness. In the next verse he describes, I'm not going to be like these impersonalists who just want liberation for themselves. That's a kind of karma. That's within the realm of material desire. See? Rather, I'm going to work to give them you, because I see there's no hope for them except your association. He's talking to Nisringadev. In other words, he's going to continue to preach. So that's the mentality we want to aspire for, is to have the preacher's mentality, which is you can't live in peace. I'm enjoying Krishna consciousness, but I want to give it to others. Sarve sukhino bhavantu. This is like one of these phrases, right? Let all be happy. Prabhupada sometimes quotes this, because Krishna consciousness is full of happiness. And the wonderful thing is, nobody is barred. Anybody who is simply ready to hear properly and take up the chanting and perform a little service can enter into the house of bhakti and make advancement. Taste the higher pleasures of Krishna consciousness and become free from those desires which are binding us to this world. Now he gives a great analogy here at the end. He cannot, unless his senses are thus engaged in service to Krishna, or Rishabdev, he says, to me, no living entity can think of getting out, can hope to get out of the great entanglement of material existence, which is exactly like Yamaraj's stringent rope. So it's just one punishment after another. So we want to get out, certainly, but that's kind of a byproduct of Krishna consciousness. More than anything, we want to develop or discover our actual nature as the pure devotees of Krishna, and learn more about and gradually taste more and more of the nectar of devotional service. That's what that whole process that Rupa Goswami outlines is about. Is when you get to the point of anartha nivritti and more of these impurities, then more and more ruchi is coming, and your faith is deepening. You become nishta. Nishta means I'm completely convinced. No one can shake me. If I had enough experience, I know this is the truth. Krishna is God. I'm his servant. Srila Prabhupada is his pure representative. All the acharyas are completely pure and full of knowledge. And I'm just going to try my best to advance. That's nishta. That's why I stand every morning. Irrevocable service. But then it doesn't end there. More and more taste for serving Krishna, and then real attraction for God comes, asakti, which matures into bhava, which matures into prema. That's what the end is, the goal is. And along the way, liberation comes as a byproduct. You can feel it already. You know, so many things that you used to be involved with or you'd be troubled by, couldn't care less anymore. You know, it's not even a consideration. Okay, so it's a little late. Any comments or questions? Local or
Hare
remote?
Krishna.
Oh, okay, we have a local here. Well, hold on, Vijay.
Yes, I can wait. No problem.
Good. Go ahead, Bhakti Daniel.
Thank you, Dravida Prabhu.
You're welcome.
So my question was, you were talking about higher taste and understanding the idea of remembering. So I've noticed that, like, if I wanted to develop a higher taste or something, right, you also need to remember that higher taste, because then you can forget it easily and then fall back down. So what are some practices that we can do to help remember or develop memory?
You're asking me? How about memorizing a verse? There's a higher taste in that. You know, because all the verses we have, there's nothing mundane there. Just try to, you know, just contemplate for a minute, you know, what it means like to memorize a Bhagavad Gita verse. You know, these are the words of God, you know, and every one of them is perfect and full of important instruction. So oftentimes you memorize the first verse, you know, Dehinosmin yata dehi. This is 2:13. That's, I think, one of the first I memorized. And it describes the process of transmigration. So there's an attraction for that. When you do it, it says, I'm doing it as a matter of duty. But after you actually get the verse down, there's a certain pleasure in it because you're actually associating with Krishna. He's not different from the sound vibration. And then there's, of course, our foundation of everything, the holy name, chanting Hare Krishna. So chanting Hare Krishna, you know, we're all doing. But the level of absorption is different in everybody. How much you really just hear the sound. It's almost so simple that the mind, it can't be that simple. You know, have to do something. No, you have to stop the mind from thinking of all these other things and just hear that sound of the holy name. And that's, you remember that, I think we read this recently in one of our morning little Vedic thoughts, that it's in the second chapter. I think the greatest Vedantist, this is in the Gita in the purport, is he who, has an attraction for chanting Hare Krishna, chanting the holy name. So that's within our feasibility. It's all a question of when you see, you have to watch the mind and see, oh, it's wandering, bring it back under the control of the self. That's in the 6th chapter. Well, we have that same process in chanting japa. You're chanting, but the mind is elsewhere. You're getting benefit, but it's diminished. The more you actually focus on it, the more that you'll get taste for chanting, and it'll be at a certain point you never want to stop it. It's so sweet. So much of the taste comes in the vibrations and sharing them with others. When you memorize a verse, share it with one of your God brothers, or use it in preaching, and you'll find that there's a tremendous taste there, that you can develop it quickly, because Krishna is very pleased with that. Shunbatam Sakata Krishna.
Going off of that, understanding like forgiving and forgetting, because then you can have more, I guess, like a clearer mind. How does one cultivate that in the practices?
How does one cultivate a clear mind?
Yeah, because like sometimes I would think of, let's say I'm trying to chant my japa, and then like, okay, I see my mind flickering and it's going places, but in the sense of, sometimes things that are like situations that I'm like trying to forgive, but it comes up, like how does one forgive in order to help continue the clear mind?
Yeah, I wouldn't try to do all that while you're chanting your japa. Anyway, we can go over it. There's a system, I mean, the basic point is to as Prabhupada said, the best way to control the mind is always to be planning out how to spread Krishna consciousness. Well, you can be planning, seeing how you can refine your services, How can I do it better? All right, showing up on time. How can I, and get enough sleep so my mind is clear and I can do it? That's something concrete. There's all kinds of ways, but if you keep your desire pure, then Krishna will give you so much inspiration. Or your God brothers, so many things that more experienced devotees have gone through, so that you'll be able to go nicely. But if you keep the desire, I want to advance in Krishna consciousness, that means I have to become more focused on everything that I do, beginning with the holy name. And then as the day goes, and the verse I said, whatever I do, whatever I'm saying, whatever I'm hearing, whatever I'm doing with the senses, is this really for Narayan? No, it's not, so I'm not going to do it. It's something else I need to do, with the senses. What is that mindfulness? To be aware of what's going on. Be here now. There's nothing wrong with that. We can use that statement. Just because of some, I'm not going to even mention his name who said it. He's an okay guy, but I don't want to contaminate. But that's a good, at every moment, there's something to do for Krishna, and there's something that you can fall into Maya. So if you're that attentive, you say, okay, look, something fell on the floor. Let me pick that up. This is Krishna's temple. To be aware that way, Let me always be aware. What can I do now for Krishna? How can I do this service for Krishna in a better way and in the most devotional way? And remember Krishna while you're doing it. What else? Okay, we have another local, then you're on. Okay, Vijay?
Yes, okay, Prabhu.
Okay, go ahead, Dimitri.
So there's high taste in chanting the Maha Mantra and memorizing the shlokas. Why don't we just pick a shloka that we like the most and chant it every morning instead of the Maha Mantra?
Okay. Because we are following the parampara, and that the Maha Mantra is the best way of counteracting this influence of Kali, and it was instructed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What to speak of all the acharyas. It's interesting for some reason. I don't know. Maybe you learned this. The words Hare Krishna do not appear anywhere in the text. Those words in the text of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He does say Maha Mantra when Lord Chaitanya is talking with Prakashananda Saraswati. So it's no question what mantra, and Prabhupada often puts Hare Krishna. But in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam, it's there many times. Lord Chaitanya is directly saying, chant this mantra, Hare Krishna, right in the text as japa, So because it's come down, and because it's, complete, and we learn about it, this is the supreme name, Krishna, and everything. And it's the most effective in this age. So that the taste for the taste for other things in relation to Krishna, with the beautiful verses, will also be reflected in our taste for the holy name. They're not mutually exclusive. Hare Krishna. Vijay Krishna, you're on. Then we'll adjourn.
Yes, Prabhu. Prabhu, my question is, in relation to the context of the verse you chose for today, text 27.
Yeah, in relation to what? Did you say context?
Yes, the context.
Okay.
So in relation to the context of the verse you chose for today, my question is as follows. What is the difference between Yamaraja's stringent rope and a common, normal rope?
Well, when I read that, I was thinking of the ropes that the Yamadutas used to yank you out of the body. You read the sixth canto and that graphic description of a Jamil, being faced with these Yamadutas coming to take him, pull him out of the body. So those are the ropes. The ropes we fashion ourselves by our sinful activities. We don't know it. It's sometimes called the Hridaya Granthi. That's another important rope that binds the heart to this material world. And those ropes need to be cut. Sometimes they're called knots, Hridaya Granthi, and they are cut by the process of devotional service, especially the sword of remembrance. Yadanur yukta karma grandinda bandadam chindandi, right in the second chapter, first canto. So there's a lot of ropes. And Yamaraja's stringent rope, it's the rope of the law of karma, the law of action and reaction that Yamaraj presides over. You did this, 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 and this. You didn't atone for it. Now you have to suffer this, this, this. It's perfect justice. You know, his son is Yudhishthir, Dharma personified, right? So it's a great entanglement. We get tied up with all of these ropes of sinful activities and material desires, and eventually Yamaraj comes in with his rope, yanks us out through the, you know, with the Yamadutas from the body. And then we're bound up. When you read that fifth canto, or some in the third canto, you may remember being dragged along on this long road to hell. At that point, you can't do anything about it. You know, now is time for suffering. So that's what material existence is. It's so many things that bind us here. But the process of bhakti is very ingenious, because with the elements of material existence, the very things that bind us, like food, you know, you can go to hell just by eating meat, you know. But if you know you're in a bhakta, then you cook beautiful, wonderful, tasty preparations for Krishna within the milk and all of the other ingredients. And you offer them to Krishna with love, and you honor them, and that becomes a means of getting out of this material world. So this is Narada Muni said, the very thing that binds you can be used to liberate you. The sights and the fragrances and all the things related to deity worship, you know, they're binding. You see something beautiful, some beautiful woman, you know, that can be completely binding. But you see the beautiful form of Radha and Krishna, and that's liberating. So this is a science, probably call it. So the senses have to be thus engaged, all of the different senses in this way, and fully in Krishna's service, as mentioned, my service, he says here. And then the ropes become ropes that bind you to Krishna. What is that? Anasaktasya vishayan yataham upayunjata nirbandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyamuchyate. That without being attached to the object of the senses, but using the object of the senses where appropriate in the service of Krishna, one remains unbound to this material world, and you may get bound up to Krishna, which is what we want, bound up by affection and desire. You know, this is real vairagya. So we're looking at for that. Does that help?
Better than help, Prabhu. Again, monumental answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thanks, Vijay.
You're amazing. You're just amazing.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada, please.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Oh, this one you definitely want. Oh, no way.
Let me give it to him.